Welcome to The Deep Dive, the podcast where we sweat the small stuff so you don't have to. From real stories to expert advice, we're here to uncover everything about hyperhidrosis and empower you to take control. Ready to dive into the world of sweat and solutions? Let's make a splash.
All right, so it sounds like emotionally induced sweating. Really making things tough for you.
Yeah.
We're going deep today. We're going to go deep on all this material. You sent over, some of its familiar territory. I mean, hyperhidrosis, overactive sympathetic nervous system.
Right.
But there's some seriously surprising stuff in here too. Like, I found some strategies I'd never even heard of. And I think we might even bust a myth or two along the way.
Okay.
Ready to get into it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it is interesting, we always think about sweating is just like a physical thing,
right,
but it really is like tied into our emotions and how our bodies deal with stress.
Totally. You start sweating and you're just like, great, now everyone knows I'm freaking out.
Yeah, exactly.
So, okay, let's start with this 4-7-8 breathing technique.
Okay.
This thing caught my eye. Sounds like a secret code or something. 4-7-8. What's the science behind that?
Well, it's actually more than just like taking a deep breath.
Right.
It's actually really about the timing and how it actually activates a specific nerve called the vagus nerve.
Okay.
Which is like our body's like chill out button.
I see.
So you breathe in for a count of 4, you hold for 7, and then exhale slowly for 8.
Okay.
And that holding part is really key because it gives that vagus nerve time to send that calming signal to your brain.
Oh, wow.
Which then slows down your heart rate, starts to ease that anxiety that can really kick those sweat glands into gear.
So you're like tricking your body into thinking everything is chill.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. You also mentioned progressive muscle relaxation.
Uh-huh.
So what's that all about?
Well, it's all about releasing tension, but in a very conscious way.
Right.
So you systematically tense and relax different muscle groups, starting with like your toes, and you work your way up to your head. And that process not only relieves physical tension, but it also has a calming effect on your mind.
Right.
And it tells your nervous system it's time to chill.
It's wild that it works like that.
Yeah.
I've heard people say their sweating actually decreased just from doing these relaxation techniques.
Right.
Now, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yes.
I feel like I hear that everywhere, but I don't totally get it.
Right.
So how does rewiring your thoughts actually stop you from sweating?
Well, imagine you're about to walk into a big meeting.
Okay.
Right. And your heart's racing.
Yeah.
Your palms are getting all clammy.
Oh, yeah.
Right. CBT helps you recognize those anxious thoughts.
Right.
It's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to sweat. Everyone's going to notice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And it helps you challenge those thoughts. Now, are they really true? Probably not.
Right. Right.
So then you can replace them with more realistic thoughts like, okay, you know what? Maybe I will sweat a bit.
Yeah.
But it's a natural response. People are probably more focused on what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
You're
not ignoring the sweat, but you're changing how you think about it.
Exactly. And then there's this really amazing technique called exposure therapy.
Okay.
Where you basically gradually face your fears. So let's say public speaking is like a big trigger for you.
Right.
You might start practicing in front of a mirror.
Okay.
Then maybe in front of a friend.
Right.
Then a small group. So each step kind of desensitizes you to that fear.
Right.
Which reduces anxiety and ultimately the sweating.
Yeah, I could see how over time you just build that confidence.
Exactly.
And it's just goes away. Okay, moving on to something we all experience, which is food.
Yes.
We got to talk about coffee and spicy food.
Right.
Why do they make us sweat?
Well, both caffeine and spice can really kick that sympathetic nervous system into overdrive. The one responsible for that fight or flight.
Right.
They trigger the release of adrenaline, which increases your heart rate, increases your body temperature.
Right.
And that leads to sweating.
Ugh, so I got to give up my morning latte and my spicy curry.
No, not necessarily. It's more about knowing your limits and listening to your body.
Right.
So maybe skip that extra shot of espresso before that big presentation.
Yeah, okay.
And remember, staying hydrated is key.
Right.
Water helps regulate your body temperature and prevents dehydration, which can actually make you sweat more.
Oh, wow. That's like the opposite of what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've covered some lifestyle changes. But what if that's not enough?
Right.
Let's get into some of these medical treatments you sent. So we all know about the aluminum chloride antiperspirants.
Yeah.
But then there are these glycopyrrolate wipes.
Yeah, those are interesting.
What are those?
So those are prescription only, and they work by blocking a neurotransmitter called acetylcholine,
Okay.
which is basically the messenger that tells your sweat glands to activate.
Oh, wow.
So by blocking it, you're essentially stopping the message from going through.
You're cutting off the communication to the sweat gland.
Exactly. Yeah. And they can be super effective, especially for like localized sweating.
Oh, okay. And then there are oral meds like anticholinergics and beta blockers.
Right.
Those sound pretty hardcore.
Yeah. I mean, it's important to remember every medication has potential side effects.
Right, of course.
Right. So anticholinergics work similarly to the wipes by blocking acetylcholine.
Okay.
But you're taking it orally.
Right.
So the effects are more like systemic.
Okay.
So that can lead to things like dry mouth, maybe blurred vision, or even dizziness.
Right.
Beta blockers, on the other hand, are more about managing the physical symptoms of anxiety. So like
Right.
that racing heart, the trembling,
Yeah.
which then in turn can reduce sweating.
Okay, so it's not stopping the sweat directly, but it's stopping the anxiety that causes the sweat.
Right. Exactly.
Okay, now this one really blew my mind.
Okay.
Botox.
Yeah.
Isn't that like for wrinkles?
I know, right? Botox actually has a ton of surprising medical applications.
That's wild.
So for hyperhidrosis, it works by, again, blocking the release of acetylcholine.
Okay.
So they do tiny little injections directly into the problem areas, like underarms, hands, feet.
Wow.
And it basically temporarily paralyzes the nerves that stimulate the sweat glands.
So you're like cutting off the sweat signal at the source.
Exactly.
How long does that last?
Well, the effects usually last for several months.
Okay.
It can really be like a game changer for people who
Oh.
haven't found relief with other methods.
That's pretty incredible. Now, this next one sounds straight out of science fiction.
Okay.
Iontophoresis.
Iontophoresis, yeah.
What is that?
It might sound intimidating,
Yeah, a little bit.
but it's actually a non-invasive procedure. So you basically submerge your hands or your feet in water,
Right.
and a mild electrical current is passed through it.
What?
It's thought to work by either thickening the outer layer of your skin and creating a barrier,
Okay.
or by disrupting the nerve signals to those sweat glands.
So it's like an electric spa treatment for your hands and feet.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. Now, biofeedback. Is this like where I learn to control my sweat with my mind like a Jedi?
Not quite telekinesis.
Sorry.
But biofeedback is really cool. It helps you become more aware of your body's stress response.
Right.
So you're hooked up to sensors that monitor things like your heart rate, muscle tension, even your skin temperature.
Okay.
You see these measurements like in real time.
Oh, wow.
And you can learn techniques like deep breathing, visualization to
Right.
kind of consciously control those things.
So you're training your body to react differently to stress.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's all about like taking control rather than letting sweat control you.
Yes, absolutely.
You mentioned some natural remedies too, like sage tea
Yes.
and magnesium supplements.
Yes.
So I was curious about those. Do those actually work?
Well, so sage contains tannins,
Okay.
which have astringent properties
Right.
that can reduce sweating. So like drinking sage tea
Right.
might help a little bit.
Okay.
Magnesium plays a role in regulating nerve function.
Okay.
And there is some evidence that magnesium supplements might help prevent those nerve signals from overstimulating the sweat glands.
So they might not be like miracle cures, but they could be helpful.
Exactly, as part of like a holistic approach.
Right, right. Okay, so last thing we got to talk about the surgical options.
Okay.
And I got to admit, this is where it gets a little scary.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's be really clear. ETS, endoscopic thoracic sympathectomy, is very risky.
Yeah.
With potentially like serious side effects.
Okay.
It's rarely performed for hyperhidrosis anymore.
So what's the alternative?
Well, a less invasive option is Miragi,
Okay.
which uses microwave energy to destroy sweat glands in the underarms.
Oh, wow.
It can be effective for underarm sweating, but it's important to weigh the pros as cons with your doctor.
Yeah, surgery's not a first-line option.
No.
It's really only if nothing else works.
Exactly.
Okay.
You know, managing emotional sweating really is a journey, not a destination.
Right.
So start by understanding your triggers,
Yeah.
experimenting with those lifestyle changes we talked about,
Right.
and then exploring the medical options with your doctor. It's really about finding what works best for you
Yeah.
and reclaiming control over your life.
Well, it's encouraging to know that there are so many options out there.
Yes.
It might take some trial and error, but there is definitely a way to manage this and like live life to the fullest.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Well, I'm glad we could go deep on this today and, hang in there.
Yeah.
We'll talk to you next time.
Sounds good. Bye. Bye.
You've been listening to The Deep Dive because understanding sweat is the first step to thriving. Remember to subscribe, share, and connect with us on Hyperhidrosis Awareness Kenya's socials. Together, we can stay cool, confident, and unstoppable. Until next time, keep shining. No sweat.